So welcome everyone. As usual, an opening remark by Prof. Vinesh, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Asia Pacific University and also the Chief Innovation Officer. Prof, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dash. Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to yet another Fire Chat as part of Enterprise Wednesday. Today, we have another good session stored for you. And I'd like to thank Dash, our entrepreneur in residence, for, as usual, coordinating this together with the Project Enterprise team. I want to welcome, and we are honored to have Mr. Kashminder Singh to spend his evening with us, sharing his thoughts, his experience, and his views around the topic of entrepreneurship, innovation, and startups. I also like to thank the project team for Project Enterprise for their continuous back-end support for making all our projects, especially this Enterprise Wednesday, happen in a successful manner, together with the team from Student Services who has coordinated with us to make the live events even more successful. Over to you, Dash, and again, welcome, Kash. I hope you will put in Kash a lot of views and share with us a lot of your experiences. Yeah,
Sure.
Over to you, two gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Prof. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Enterprise Wednesday. As I've always said, my name is Dash, the entrepreneur in residence at Asia Pacific University. The aim of Enterprise Wednesday, or the aim of Enterprise, is basically to increase the entrepreneurial efficacy in the students at APU. We know that not all of them will go and become startups, but even if you don't launch a startup, today it's all about becoming entrepreneurial. Everyone should be entrepreneurial, but not everyone will go and start up companies. And that's what we firmly believe in. We are delighted to have Kash. Kash is the co-founder and CSO at pitchIN. For those of you who have not heard, pitchIN is the Malaysia's, maybe even Southeast Asia's now, leading crowdfunding platform. Kash has been an entrepreneur for most of his life. He's also a partner of an accelerator called WatchTower and Friends. We'll let Kash speak about his entrepreneurial, what shall I say, life, his experience. I've known Kash for the last 2 decades now. A very humble, self-effacing young man. Not very young anymore. Yeah, I think must be the same age. So Kash, if they say that an entrepreneur, should be always like a surfer in the ocean, always surfing the ocean, changing course if he needs to, jumping and catching the next wave. And like I said earlier, I've known you, for the last more than 2 decades maybe, and you for one have always seen what's coming next and jumped on. And now together with your partner Sam, you have built a completely successful crowdfunding platform. Tell us about your life journey and how you got to where you are right now.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Dash. Interestingly, it's Dash and Kash today, so we both sound the same, almost the same in name. So I'm very, very happy to be here. So when Dash asked me to come and speak, I said, university students, definitely, right? Because that's one of our passion, right? Because you stay young, as Dash said, and I always say that I am young, not by age, but by my attitude and our belief. And it's because we do stick around with young people. So and that's why I'm happy to be here. So yes, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. And I didn't actually know that description, but the one that you shared actually suits me perfectly to a certain extent. I've been surfing to many extent all my life. Started way back in my early 20s, my first business, and that was it was a non-technology business because technology wasn't even around then at that time. Computers were not even really starting off. And it was a simple and small photocopy center. So that's what I did when I first started. In in that short time that we ran it, I think for 2 or 3 years, we managed to build it up to quite a large photocopying center. And I then saw that the future was not photocopying, right? Because the computers were beginning to arrive then. And we bought a computer, I used it, I liked it. And the next year itself, I sort of went into the computer business and started to sell computers. Did that for a few years fairly well. And then again saw the future and said that time for us to build some websites. And we did do that. We built some websites. Again, a few years later, I realized that it's not what I want to do in the sense of always looking for clients to build stuff for them. So we wanted our own product. And by that time, handphones had arrived. And so I decided that it's good, it's time for us to maybe start a publication. And long story short, 2 years later, I launched a magazine called Mobile World, which we ran for nearly 10 years, over 10 years or so. In between, we also did some large events called GoMobile, which was expos about mobile technologies and all that, which was held in Colombo, KL Convention Center. And by 2011, I decided that it was a good time for us to look beyond publications and media because, they're all suffering. And so I had met Sam a few years earlier. So Sam is my co-founder and CEO of pitchIN and WTF Accelerator. So we had met, connected, and 2011 or so, we said, let's get together and start something. So we started with Accelerator first, which we still run today, although it's sort of a bit in the back burner now. But over the first few years, we actually had a few programs. We've invested in over 50 startups. Some of them have done very well. Startups like the Lorry, Money Match, MyCash, Postco, La Pasa. So a lot of startups have gone through our program, and we are actually investors, the first investors in them. But in 2013, we also saw this opportunity to launch a crowdfunding website, and we launched it. And 2 years later, we got a license to do equity crowdfunding. And so we got the license in 2015, 2016. We started equity crowdfunding, and equity crowdfunding is really the way for people who have businesses to come to us, and we help them to raise money in return for shares in their company for investors. So we started in 2015. By a year later, we had become the leading platform. And today, yes, we are the leading platform. And even beyond Dash, we are beyond ASEAN. Actually, our records show that we are actually the largest in the whole of Asia and Asia Pacific right now. So that's what we do. pitchIN, okay, I leave it to you. I think.
No, go for it. It's your platform. Talk to us whatever you want to say.
So pitchIN today, from the time we started in 2016, pitchIN has helped 112 companies to raise money, and we've raised over 177 million. When I use the word raise, I don't mean that I took out my own money and put it into the pockets of these entrepreneurs. I mean that our platform helped these companies come onto our platform and reach out to investors. Of course, we help them to do that too. And investors who like those companies and their offers then became their investors. Right? So that's basically what we do. And 112 companies, 177 million. We've got over nearly 6,000, I think, by now, or at least more than 5,500 people in Malaysia and the world who have actually put money into these companies. So we've grown a lot. And with ourselves, pitchIN itself, we've got our own roadmap for growth, and we're going to launch some new services. So early this year, we decided to raise money for ourselves. We wanted to do crowdfunding. Unfortunately, we could not do the crowdfunding on our own platform. Since we have a license from the Securities Commission, we had to consult the Securities Commission, and they said, I think it's advisable for you to run on another platform. So we ran our crowdfunding on one of our fellow ECF platforms, and we just completed 2 weeks ago, 5.5 million from 322 investors. And we're going to use this money to actually launch a few more services that are coming in this year and next year. I think that's a fairly good introduction of what we do.
Fantastic, Cash. You have really grown from, or not, I mean, from starting from photocopy, selling computer, and then going to mobile and events, and also now, gone into this. No, so when you were and Sam launched pitchIN, a crowdfunding platform, I would like you to explain crowdfunding to those who
Sure.
are not familiar. That was also the time I remember there were a lot of government interventions in startups, grants, government were helping, giving money and all that. And at this time, you launched something where entrepreneurs can raise money independent of anything. What was the inspiration that gave you the confidence, gave you and Sam the confidence to say, this is, I remember sitting with you at a coffee place where you were talking about Kickstarter and all those kind of stuff. And it was so new and at that time, and what gave you the inspiration? What was the impetus to get this going? And how did you know this is going to work?
Sure. Okay, yeah. So let me explain crowdfunding first, right? So crowdfunding is very briefly a way to raise money either for your projects or for your business or even for your courses, passions, and even all the way till getting some form of aid from the crowd. Right? So it's all part of the democratization of services and platforms and things that we see all around the world. So crowdfunding, when it first started and really kickstarted, as you rightfully say, really brought the word crowdfunding to the mainstream of people all over the world. They started what is called a reward crowdfunding website. So, today they are the largest in the world. And what they do is people have ideas, products. For example, a watch, right? So if someone wants to build a watch, the traditional way would have been for them to go and build and go to a factory and make 200,000 watches and then try to sell them and find nobody want to buy them. Right? So to validate your products, you can go to Kickstarter and say, I'm going to build a watch. This watch is special, it's smart, and if you like it, you come and back me, and when the watch is built, you give me some money now. When the watch is built, I'll give you it at half price to you because you're my early backer. So that's what crowdfunding, at least in reward, is like, right? And they did very well. So we also felt in Malaysia that something like that is needed. So we started our reward crowdfunding website in 2012. So that's how we started. And the whole idea was that we felt that Malaysians too, because at that time you couldn't start a Kickstarter project unless you had an actual address in the States. So we felt that Malaysians can and should try to get their dreams realized. Right. So we started, only to find that it's a bit more difficult. Reward crowdfunding is a bit more difficult in Malaysia, and I think that comes from maybe from the culture that we have, where people say that why should I be helping other people, and what's in it for me? In America it's different, right? So someone sees somebody with a good project, they say, hey, I'll back this young man, I'll back this lady all the way, let me put some money and help her to reach her dreams. But in Malaysia it's a bit more difficult, but still we did quite a few projects. But by then, this new thing called equity crowdfunding had started, mainly in the States again, but especially in UK. Right? So there were a few platforms that were starting, and we looked at it and we said, this could be ideal for Malaysia. Very rightfully, you said at that time, and really, I think you guys, students who come out and you want to start businesses, you are actually starting a business in probably one of the best countries in the world. The support from the government, from the agencies in Malaysia is incredible. Right? We've got organizations like Cradle, Magic, and a lot more bodies that are here to help you start a business. But that was not the same when I first started my business. There was no one to go to, right? None. And but now today we have this, right? This climate is there, and they can help you get started. But we realized that there is a gap, right? You could probably get a grant, and you could start a business, right? If you needed a bit of money and get your prototype out. But that's not enough to get a business going. To go further, you would need a bit more capital, and definitely there was a gap. Right? There were a few VCs in town, and some from Singapore, but they could only address a certain portion of the market, and especially they wanted to address the portion where you've already grown a bit bigger, then they're willing to fund you. So we saw a gap in this, what you call Series A and a bit below that. So we felt equity crowdfunding was ideal, right? Why don't we just democratize the whole thing? Get good businesses, look at them, check them out. If they're okay, put them on the platform, publicize them and say, hey, look, this business is raising money. And if you like the business, become a shareholder. Put your money and you get shares in return. And the Securities Commission at that time was looking at various things to do to sort of bring digital services in the investment industry into Malaysia, and they also identified equity crowdfunding. They spoke to us and a few other organizations and said, ECF, which is what equity crowdfunding is, it's a good thing for Malaysia. And after 1 year of preparation and all that, they launched the thing. And true enough, our hunch was right. Malaysians love equity crowdfunding, right? It just took us a few months and we struck our first large deal. I must place on record that that company is called Kaki Tangan. So they came, right? So Kaki Tangan is a software platform for human resources, right? So a company can use it for payroll and leave management and HR work and all that. And the guy came, Evan, the founder, came to us and said he needed some money. He needs about $1 million or so to build his business. He already built it and he was getting some traction, but obviously he need to grow very fast. And he had spoken to VCs. There was a lot of interest, but they were putting in a bit more tougher terms. So we said, let's try the crowd. And Evan and us reached out, and that was the first major deal. In fact, he raised his money in 24 hours. Right? So in just 24 hours, a lot of entrepreneurs and investors came out, backed him. He had raised more than $1 billion by the end of that campaign. And that, of course, hit the news. And from that point onwards, we didn't really look back. And, there came a lot of deals after that.
So Kaki Tangan was your first one of these things. So you said you went to Securities Commission was looking at crowdfunding. Was it that is it because you already are starting it and then they said, maybe there is a possibility here, or is it they were also looking at it, or the timing was serendipitous? Did you educate our regulator, or was it what shall I say, a storm waiting to happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the best way to describe it is that I think both our visions were the same. In fact, the Securities Commission vision, which is they're still rolling out till today, was a bit larger than this. Right. So just a bit of a brief explanation. There are two kinds of companies, right? So you've got public companies. These public companies are listed on the stock exchange, right? So today, if you want to become a shareholder of Maybank, DG, or I don't know, Top Glove and all that, you can go and buy the shares on the stock market. So they're publicly listed, so you can invest in them. But the vast majority of companies in Malaysia are non-public companies, Sendirian Berhad, private limited, right? So private limited companies, according to the current law, you can't really raise money from the public, right? So there's a limited way for them to raise money, and things are beginning to change all over the world, right? This democratization of capital that I spoke about. So what the Securities Commission was doing was that they were planning to find ways to allow private limited companies, or what they call the unlisted market, services for them, innovative ways for them to raise money. And they had come up with a whole roadmap, a large roadmap that included crowdfunding, Sharia funding, and a few other things like what you see today in the market, like robo-advisory, peer-to-peer lending, and all these kind of things that they come up with. In fact, they wanted to roll it out as one thing. And they started to look around at that time, and they in fact approached and put out a white paper and approached banks and all that. And banks, to be honest, at that time looked at it and said, this is not our market. They were not interested. Nobody wanted to do it. And then they looked at, and they came and spoke to people like us who were already doing crowdfunding, and they said, do you want to do this? We said, yes and no. I can't do the whole thing today, right? But I can do crowdfunding today, and I would like to do other things tomorrow. So they said, fine, let's do equity crowdfunding first. And then we sat down, we consulted, and then the regulators came up with this platform and the license application. And then over the years, the inputs that we gave and the Securities Commission vision that they've been rolling out came out at equity crowdfunding, for which we have a license. And then they rolled out peer-to-peer, which we did not participate at that time. and then they also have done robo advisory, and today they even have this thing called digital asset exchanges and all that. So all kinds of services have rolled out for ways for people to raise money or to invest. Right. So I would say, as you say, serendipitous coming together of minds.
Right, right. And how did you all have to do a lot of educating the public on at that time, when you all started 2013 and all that, what a startup is, how to invest in a startup? Did you have to do a lot of education? Because we have a lot of very, very, some of them may not be aware of the difference between a startup and a small company and all those kind of things. Startups needs to chase. Did you have to do a lot of work on that?
Yes. There was a lot of education that we had to do, right? Even for
Right.
reward crowdfunding, I told you about all this culture and mindset problem that we had. Even for reward
Yeah.
crowdfunding, I remember Sam, my co-founder, saying that he was, we have put up a booth somewhere and showcasing the reward project, which were people who wanted to do something, and in exchange they only give you rewards, right? So they would just say that I'm going to come up with this new book, and if you back me when the book is ready, I'll give you the book when it's printed. So this guy came up to him and said, listen to the whole thing of what you're doing for crowdfunding. Then he says, are these people handicapped? So Sam said, no, they're not handicapped. So he said, if they're not handicapped, why are they asking me money? Why don't they go do it themselves, right? So at that time, people failed to understand that the whole concept of validation and backing people and participating and helping to make projects come to life, right? They didn't understand that. And when equity crowdfunding came, and that was in like 2016, 2015, when we first launched, we went through the same thing again. A lot of people again are only used to some forms of investment. So common question was, if I invest today, tomorrow, what dividend can I get? Right? Can I sell my shares tomorrow? And we had to explain to people, no, you are coming into a high risk, high growth investment scenario here. You invest into startups. You don't expect to sell immediately. You grow with them. So you are looking at normally 3 to 5 years kind of scenario, but your returns will be pretty good. It took some time until today. A lot of people may find that risk maybe not palatable then, but those who can, and there were a lot of people who were already looking, because you see, and I like to tell people that if there was no ECF, you won't be able to invest in these companies. And some of these companies have grown a lot. Kaki Tangan is a very good example, and there are many more like that. In fact, pitchIN, we've been keeping our record, tracking these companies, and we've got figures that says that if you were to have invested in these companies in 2017, your money would have grown 5 to 6 times today, right? So we've got that kind of figures. So those people who know and they saw what is happening, if there's no ECF, you would be missing out on these deals.
Right.
Grab is a very good example, right? So you look at Grab today, they say it's a unicorn and huge and all that, but not many people don't know is that Grab went to Cradle and got a small grant many years ago, just before equity crowdfunding started. And I like to say that if ECF was around at that time, who knows, Grab might have come to a company like pitchIN and raise his money there, and we could have all have invested in Grab, but there was nothing. They had to deal only with VCs, and they went their way. But we have been able to help people invest in companies like Kaki Tangan or Oxwhite, the fashion brand, Commerce.Asia, which is launched by this well-known entrepreneur Ganesh Banga. So all these companies you would not have been able to invest. Signature Market, another very good company, grown a lot. All this investment opportunities came from ECF. So a bit of education was needed, but today people understand. Right? A lot of people understand, and I think, and it's interesting. A lot of people tell us that maybe the pandemic may have affected you all, and we say yes, it did, but in a good way. It was, without no disrespect to all these people who are suffering. This pandemic has brought about this huge wave of digitalization, and because of that, there are new players in the market and new winners, and people rush to invest in all these companies with digital solutions. So actually, last year was our best ever year, right? A huge number of companies were funded and we raised a large amount of money. This year is the same. We've already surpassed last year's figures by 6 months. So really, I think this education phase is over, But today now really is really, maybe yes, we still need to educate a bit more, maybe outside the Klang Valley, but a lot of people are beginning to understand that ECF is a very viable tool.
Right. And are they raising Cash, maybe it's better for the participants or whoever who's watching. Take us through, let's say we have a young student, say from APU, for example. I mean, you're okay with students, right? You're also
Sure.
with students.
Yeah,
So
in a way,
anything.
yeah.
So assuming that you have a brilliant student with a brilliant idea and he or she wants to go to you all for raising money, ideally, what is the journey? How does it look like? What will your advice be to them? And the whole thing. Take us on this walk down raising pitchIN funding.
Okay, sure. Okay, so typically, as I say, we still operate two platforms: the reward platform and the equity crowdfunding platform. So just keep that in mind first. And so our reward crowdfunding platform is exactly the same like Kickstarter, right? And there's no regulations needed for that. So that one we've been operating and it's going on. The equity crowdfunding platform, which is our core business today, that one basically requires approval from the Securities Commission. Right? So we operate under a approval from the Securities Commission, and there are guidelines set by them that we have to follow. Right? So you can say that there are guidelines that are enforced. So the reason why I tell you that is because when companies come to us, we have to first follow the guidelines. So take the example of a student. So if a student comes to us today, and we do get a lot of them who come to us and contact us and says, I've got this idea, I'm a student, I've got this idea and I want to launch a business. We typically ask them first at what stage you are, right? It's not that an idea cannot get funded. An idea can get funded. We have funded one or two ideas just at idea stage, but the chances are pretty slim because one of the things that investors look for is traction, as in what have you done and how is your solution or your company doing. And many of the people who come to us may not even have started a company, right? So it's just an idea. So if you come to me with just an idea, I typically will tell you and ask you, what are your next steps, right? So if you're a student, your next steps may not be a full-fledged business. You may need some validation. And we have an accelerator program. I may take you to that, or I may, say, talk to people like Dash and all that, so some programs. Get your idea validated. Maybe you need to even get something small done that you may need some funds for. Maybe consider our reward project. Right? So a reward project, you're not giving out shares in a company. You just go there and you say, I want to build this prototype. And when I build this prototype, maybe I'll give you back this reward. Right? See whether people like the idea or not. So find some way of doing validation. But let's assume you're pretty firm in your idea and you maybe have done a little bit to get things started. Then if you want to do equity crowdfunding, there are guidelines to be met. And one of the guidelines is you need to have a company. So if you have incorporated a sole proprietorship and you come to me, I can't work with you because as sole proprietorship, you can't give out shares in a company. Right? So you need to have a company. Right? So then my advice to you will be get a company form if you really want to raise money. But maybe before that, and this is something that we do with a lot of people who come to us, we help them understand whether you can do crowdfunding or not. Right? In other words, are you ready for crowdfunding? Right? So the way to answer that would be very simple. Are you ready for crowdfunding? The short answer is you will be if you are investable. Right? So if you are investable, if your idea is investable, your company is investable to investors, that means somebody is willing to put money into you, then you're ready. That's our first criteria. Are you investable? Right? So typically, if it's just idea stage, it's very hard to gauge that. So that's when a lot of people do end up with what they call the friends and family first round of investors. Of course, families will back you. Or your dad may say, I'll give you money, or your uncle may say, I'll back you, or your friends will say, let's all put money together. So that in that wise, you are semi-investable. But you come to serious investors, they want to, really look at the idea and they want to see your traction. So normally you would have gone through the first phase on your own. Your friends may have put in some money, or launch something, incorporated a company, and then you get a bit of traction. Then you come to us, it's easier. We can tell people and help you to put together a deck that will show idea stage 1 year ago. I got some money, I've done this, incorporated my business. Either I have a large number of users growing, or I already have revenue, then investors will come in. Right, so
Okay.
that would be the typical stage. And then when they are saying, I'm ready to raise funds, we've got this whole process, which I will just break down into 4 stages. First stage is, under the guidelines, I have to do due diligence on you. So you come to me, and one of our team members will take you through due diligence. We check your company, we check whether you are okay, whether company is legit, whether you are registered, whether you have filed all your documents. We look at your accounts and your all that. It's called due diligence, right? So we look at everything to make sure that what you're telling me is true. If you say that I got revenues of 500,000, then let's look at your bank accounts. If you tell me that I've got 10,000 users, then let's see some proof of that. So we do due diligence on the company. Once that's completed, we then help them to prepare for fundraising. That we call it the pre-live stage, where they prepare, get their deck ready, get their offer ready, and you'll be surprised at the number of people who already launched businesses who have no idea how to structure a deal, how to know the number of shares, and what's the valuation of the company. So we help them to understand all that. At that point, they're already beginning to get their offer ready, and we typically tell them to start raising money, at least from their first round of investors, before they go fully live. Because you want to get, and your first round of investors in your equity crowdfunding is normally people who know you, right? Maybe your suppliers, your associates, your people. They say, okay, I like the idea. Maybe you're giving some early bird discount for shares. They come in, we raise a decent amount, then we go live, and that's when you reach out to the wider public. Okay, your offer goes live. You have a certain number of days. We publicize, you publicize. It's very heavy marketing. We have events. Today we can't have physical events, so we have online events. We advertise in Facebook. We advertise in other sectors. The founders themselves call out to everybody they know. They have their own stuff. Maybe they send out to WhatsApp, and everybody looks at the deal and they start investing. Deal successful. The deal is completed. Then we take them to the 4th stage, which is do all the paperwork, signing of shareholders agreements, and then they will be able to get the money that they have raised, and the investors will get their share certificates. That's generally how it happens. One good thing about equity crowdfunding is that today the government have also seen the value, so they've come and set up this thing called the Malaysian Co-Investment Fund. So there's a bit of a fund where it's not free money as in a grant, but the government invests along with the crowd. Right? So that money is also available. So it runs today is running on a 4-for-1 basis. So if you raise 4 ringgit from your crowdfunding investors, the government co-investment fund will also invest 1 ringgit. So at the end of the day, if you raise 800,000, for example, you get another 200,000 investment from the co-investment fund, which will make it 1 million. And the Malaysian Co-Investment Fund will be a shareholder in your company, along with the other investors. So that's basically how crowdfunding works.
Very nice. Thank you, Kash, for taking us through that. What about when you talked about traction? You talked a lot about traction. I think they will let the questions in at about 6:45. Yeah, tell us a little bit about traction. So the idea stage is not what you are encouraged. We know. So startups that come to you must have some traction. Tell us about traction. What kind of traction would make it investable for you to take them to due diligence and pre-live stage and all that? When do you say it's investable? How do you determine something is investable? Of course, traction is there, but tell us about traction.
Yeah. So traction is a very wide definition, right?
Yes.
So traction is very hard to put down into words, but really, I would say traction is when a company, you can see growth and steady growth starting to happen on any metric, right? So it could be that if the company is able to show that their numbers of users are growing, so that's one traction, right? It could simply be by revenue, right? It could be by other things like the interest that is being generated on websites, for example, right? Page views, right? So those kind of things could be traction, right? Anything that could show that this company has an idea that has begun to take hold and it will grow, right? Because I always tell myself, and I said that in the beginning, every idea is the same, right?
Yes.
And just using Grab as an example, he was not the first, right, to come up with this idea of having this car sharing or right, e-hailing and all that. He was not the first, even in Malaysia, right? So there were few around and all that. But the traction is the stage where I think what we call growth, right? You actually have solid growth, whatever way you describe it, but there must be some growth. So if someone and we have seen that, right? We have companies that have come to us, and we help them to understand. Maybe 18 months ago, they came to us and they say, "I've got this thing, I've done this, and I've got this amount of users and traction and all that." And then we help them to understand, and maybe they even speak to a few investors, and they realize they are not ready for fundraising. And we tell them, maybe you need to do this and come back. And some of them, I've gone back and look at them 1 year later, and they've not grown since then.
Right.
For me, there's no more traction. In my mind, I tell myself, that's a dead man walking. Right?
Yeah,
they're not going to grow.
right.
If 1 year later you still tell me I'm still at that stage, you're not going to grow.
Yeah.
But then we see companies with amazing traction, right? So Oxwhite, right? When they came to us, I think their revenue was below 5 million that year, right? But he had just started, just a bit over a year before that, with nothing, right? At that time, they had, just from the selling that one white shirt, I don't know whether you know the Oxwhite brand. Maybe the students will know because it's quite famous brand online now, right? So the Oxwhite guy, CK Chan, he started by just selling this white office shirt, that really high quality cotton shirt. And he had amazing traction. He started by offering, I think, 1 ringgit first the shirt, and then after he was selling for, 60 to ringgit to 90 ringgit or whatever. And a lot of people bought the shirt. So by the time he came to us, he had shown us that he had 20,000 people who had either signed up or were users of his platform, buying his shirts and all that. For us, that was traction. Right? So it's easy.
Wow.
The investors, in fact, Oxwhite is a classic example of a crowdfunding campaign done the way it should be. I really didn't have to do much selling for Oxwhite because he had 20,000 people who loved his shirts. Right? So by the time he came to us, all he had to do was to write back and tell the same users, "Hey, you like my shirts, you like my t-shirts, I am going to grow. Would you like to be my shareholder?" And in a matter of weeks, there were hundreds of emails from people saying that I want to invest in Oxwhite. And finally, he ended up with 5 over million from 485 investors. And then he took that money. And and I think recently there was an article I saw where Oxford said that their revenue has now crossed 15 million. Right? So these investors, their money is in safe hands, right? The guy has grown it. So that's traction. And just to give you another example of a company who came to us purely an idea, I can use an example of a company called Sales Candy. And so Sales Candy, the founders came to us with just an idea. They wanted to build an app.
Wanted to build a what? Sorry, what?
App. They wanted to build an app.
Okay.
App for sales, right? So they saw this problem, right? They saw this problem that was happening, especially in their first target market was the property industry, right? So at that time, the property industry was growing a lot of projects and all that. So every property developer had projects. And how do you sell a project? You actually advertise. And then you tell people if you're interested to buy the house to contact the agents, right? And normally when the call comes through or the inquiry comes through, somebody in the property developer company has got to reach out to these people and sell them the house. The problem was, and this is a problem common in many places where you have to do a lot of sales quickly, right? Because if somebody wants to buy a house, he's interested. But you go to him 6 months later, he's no longer interested. You have to address this quickly. But developers were finding out that, when they come and a lead comes to them, they were giving it to the agent and say, this is a lead and here's another lead for you, here's another lead for you. and they were realizing a lot of these leads were not being followed up on.
Right.
So
Lot of
these
time
guys,
wasted.
right? So these guys wanted to build an app which would take control of this lead management thing, right? And allow the developer companies to know that if this call came through and it was channeled to this agent, to their agent or to their staff salesman, and what the salesman did he immediately call that person? Did he take 3 days to call the person? And what did he do after his call? So the whole lead management and sales cycle was on that app. Only thing is they had not built the app yet. So when they came to us, they had never built the app. The reason why they were very interesting is because these two founders were not someone who had just come with an idea. They had already built two successful companies before. Right? So they knew what they were doing. So we said, okay, but you're still an idea. Do you think people will be interested? And here comes the traction that they had. They showed us and they said that, yes, I've gone to 3 or 4 property development companies and all of them told us, if you build this app, I'll sign up with you. And in fact, one of them even has written out a check for us and said, here's a check, 6-figure check. You build that app, you have your first customer. For us, that's traction. Okay? So we said, fine, let's go. And and Sales Candy was another deal that came. In fact, they came twice to our platform, and they've grown. In fact, they're I think in 3 or 4 countries today, right? Just from an idea stage. So it is possible, but come and show an investor your traction, and it can be anything. Yes. As long as they convince an investor that you can do it. And I think this thing of traction, actually, if you want me to talk a little bit about the other thing, and a lot of people come to us and say, why this company is successful, why this company is not successful.
Exactly.
Both have the same ideas. And I'll tell you the other thing, this thing that we look for, because Sam and I, we also invest in companies, right? Especially at our accelerator stage, we invest. Why do we invest in these companies? And in fact, why some of our investments have done well, we've learned over the years, and why some haven't, it boils down to one very important thing: the founders. Right? Of all the things that people come to us, and I think a lot of investors look for, they do look for things, right? So investors will normally look for various things like the idea, how big the idea is it the right timing for the idea, what's the market size, and all that kind of thing. But they will look at the founders, whether the founders can execute or not. So I think the difference, founders. And so the guys, the people, the investors, and these companies, there were property development companies and all these other companies. They look at the founders and says, I think these guys can execute. I'll put my money on them.
So this comes out very consistently, Kash. I've got so many questions, and we also have to open up the questions. But sure. This has been very consistent everywhere we hear. Founders, the agency of the founders is the currency in which the company becomes investable. So what do you look for in a founder? Whether it's a nascent entrepreneur, a first-time entrepreneur, the 2 companies you spoke about, one just came with the idea, they have done startups before. So tell us a little bit more, dive in a little deeper into that about founders, the quality of the founders.
Sure. So I think obviously we know to a certain extent founders or entrepreneurs are different from other people.
Yeah.
Right? They have to be for them to do this. And it's not easy to spot them. To a certain, sometimes you come and see and meet this person and you look at him and say, doesn't look like a founder. Maybe even doesn't sound like a founder. But sometime later you see, hey, this guy is, he can get things done, right? So for me, at the end of the day, I never quantify to one simple thing and say that a founder must dress like this, or founder must be this age group, or the founder. For me, if it looks and smells like a founder, that means it's done something. That's a founder, right? So what kind of qualities are there in a founder, right? And I think some of them are common, right? For example, founders must be risk takers. That's one thing. If you can't take risk, then it's hard for you to launch a business. right? Yeah. So then you do, and just now in the beginning when you spoke, and it's true, right? I tell everybody that you can be a founder or you should be an entrepreneur. No, you shouldn't. But for you to succeed today in the world, no matter where you end up, what position, you will benefit greatly if you have an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. So this entrepreneurial mindset is about risk taking, right? But not crazy risk taking. And you can see that with the people who finish their money very quickly, right? And you can see that in real life, the guys who maybe writes everybody likes to take risks when you're young, but the guy who decides to go into all this mud rampage and die at the next corner 2 days after he gets a new motorbike, it's excessive risk, right? So you learn to take risks, but you stay within this thing about calculated risk. So you must be able to take risks. I think the other thing is that maybe you need to be able to spot solutions and problems. The same person can look and say, this is a big problem. Another person can look and say, this is a big problem. What's the solution to the problem? And they can spot problems. It can be from the work that they're doing and they notice a problem that needs to be solved, and they can also, see that there can be a better solution to an existing problem, those kind of things. So they must be able to spot the solution. The second thing, the third thing is that they must be able to execute. And therein lies the big difference. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you must be able to execute. And execute is a whole challenge by itself, right? Because execution simply means being able to do what you need to get it done. Because sometimes you may have to say that I can't raise the money, but I'm still going to execute. I'm still going to find other ways to do it. Just to give you a personal story, right? In 2000, when I wanted to launch my magazine, right? And I said, okay, let's launch a magazine. Right? So I decided I will launch a magazine. I went and did my research and said, okay, I can launch a magazine, but I'm not really fully familiar with this publication business and these things for journalism and all that. And I started to reach out to people, right? So obviously, some of the people pointed me towards some consultants and all that. And one of the consultants I spoke to, who was from the publishing and journalist industries, told me, you need 2 million. If you don't have 2 million ringgit, you can't launch a magazine. And I was telling myself, in 2000, if I've got 2 million ringgit, I'm not going to launch a magazine. I'm going to go and buy a beach house. And I'm going to retire. So I don't have 2 million to launch my magazine. But he's telling me I launched 2 million. And at that time, there was no VCs and no other ways to raise money. I knew what money I had and what resources I had. So what I did was I decided, how can I launch a magazine with way less money? And I found that I could. I was able to, instead of him telling me that you need to go and talk to a photography studio to take photographs for you for, 30,000-40,000 ringgit a month, I bought a digital camera. At the time, I bought a digital camera for 2,000 ringgit and shot my own photographs. I did my own writing, right? I turned my website designers into graphic designers, right? And I was able to launch a magazine for way less money, right? So to a certain extent, I executed, so in that way, and a guy with the idea will, and a solution will not give up even if he can't raise money.
Yep.
He will find ways to get it done, right? So executions are very important. So these are some of the ways, things that, the ability for solutions and the ability to execute them.
Yeah. So this is what we are also trying to do with a lot of young people, trying to give them the agency of building, going out and navigating all these things instead of just saying, I will only start something when I raise so much money. You know what I mean? So let's take some questions. Kash, I also want to talk to you a little bit, want you to talk about how you and Sam raised your own this money, the recent experience. We can do that in the last 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, you want to take the question. Nafis has asked, based on your experience, what's the biggest challenge a crowdfunding platform endure in a traditional environment in Malaysia? I will leave that to you.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just asking that. The noise, a bit of noise coming up. Okay.
That's an entrepreneur multitasking.
Multitasking, yeah. So basically, we all stuck in the houses, right? So that's the kitchen sound happening there. Okay, so basically, biggest challenge of crowdfunding platform in the traditional environment, as I said, there are a lot of, I would say, investors, even a lot of businessmen and a lot of Malaysians are not very familiar yet with running businesses and investing or even looking for investment on a platform as in a digital platform. So I think the biggest challenge would be a lot of people are used to, and this was in the beginning, right? In the beginning, when you first launched our crowdfunding platform, a lot of people say, I want to see the founder. If you want me to invest, I want to see the founder face to face, right? But then if you're sitting in Kuching, how do I get the founder to you? Yeah, we tried some events here and there, right? But if I want to rescale, I got to find other ways, right? And in the same way, a lot of people are also so used to investing in companies where it's like a public market. I can buy today and sell tomorrow. So I think our biggest challenge was to sell the mindset that we are now giving you access to a very early stage companies that you wouldn't have been able to invest in previously. Before 2015, you simply cannot invest in these companies because either the VCs will grab them or their friends and families will take them. The second thing is understanding this digital environment that we operate in, being able to read offers online, being able to understand these things about how to see them online. So these are kind of challenges that we endure. But let me also correct that statement a little bit. We are not so traditional anymore.
Yes.
Right? Actually, the statistics say Southeast Asia and Malaysia especially are one of the most tech-savvy people in the world. We are very heavy users of WhatsApp, Facebook, and all that. Among the top 10 in almost of this platform, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all that, we are right up there. So I think, yes, we may look traditional, but we are no longer that traditional anymore. And that's a boon for everybody who wants to get into business.
Is in pitching crowdfunding, is it a lifetime commitment or is it a one-off situation? How about the return?
Okay. So this is a very common question that people give us. Right? What about the return? Right. So there are various ways you can hope to benefit when you invest into equity crowdfunding deal. Right. So typically everybody who comes to, of course we do have, let me just clarify, we do have companies that are a bit more traditional who come and raise money. These companies are already profitable. So some of them will say, I'll give you dividends of say 6% a year because I'm already profitable. I just need more money for expansion. So I'll be able to show you dividends of 6% a year. And hopefully when my company value grows, you can also have some capital gains. But typically, and by and large, most of the companies that come to us are still growing. They cannot promise you dividends. So what they're saying is, I'm going to grow big. My valuation is going to go up. And how do you benefit when my valuation goes up in a few years? So I can't name the companies now. Let me just give you two examples. We have two companies who are in the stages of going to an IPO soon. That means they're going to go for an initial public offering. Once that is done, the shares that you hold in those companies will then be on the stock exchange. That means you can buy and sell them. So at that time, you will be able to exit simply by selling your shares. And I estimate if one of that companies, when that happens, what you invested in 4 years ago will today be worth, every 1 ringgit will be worth 6 ringgit. Right? So you'll be able to exit and really, if you put in 1,000, you'll be able to sell it for 6,000 ringgit. Good returns. So that's one way, through exits of either an IPO or even an acquisition, which has happened in some cases, where some bigger company buys the whole company up and they buy all the shareholders out, including you, and then so you get some return. So that's one way of return, right? We also have coming up soon a secondary market that is also coming up, right? So we have a secondary market that is coming up, and in the secondary market, these companies who are not ready for full exit yet, the SC is allowing us to set up a small mini kind of market for these companies. So for example, Oxford maybe they haven't gone for IPO yet, but down the road, sometime later this year, our secondary market will open. And what happens is that you can put up your shares for sale. Looking at the valuation today, you can put up your share. So those are the kind of returns that you typically have if you were to invest in equity crowdfunding deals.
So if I want to invest in crowdfunding, what's the biggest consideration that I should focus on?
Okay, I think first thing you have to ask yourself, and I tell people this a lot, ask yourself what kind of person you are. But coming back again to the risk, it's not just in business, right? Everybody have our own risk profiles, and everybody have our own life stories and life challenges and all that. And I tell people, I use a very simple example. When people ask me, what should I do? What should I invest? I tell them, look, if you're married, please don't invest your children's college funds into here.
Yeah.
That's too high a risk, right? You need your money for your children's education. ECF is not the right place to a certain extent, right? So your investment portfolio should be balanced, right? We always speak about balanced investment. You got the lowest form of return, FD, which actually is way below even inflation today, but you can actually put your money in FD and get about 2 or 3% a year, but safe. Nobody takes your money, right? Your money will always be there. And then you go all the way to more risky thing like stock market investment and then equity crowdfunding. So these are all risky. So ask yourself, how much money can you afford to put into a higher risk, high gain strategy? That's your first biggest consideration. Decide how much money you're willing to lose. If you're not willing to lose that money, then please don't. So that should be one consideration. Right? So have that consideration. Then you decide. And then the next consideration is, I advise people, please don't bet on one horse. Don't. Right? Don't bet on one horse. These are all startups. They are growing, right? So I think what you want to do is maybe you want to back 2 or 3 horses, because the whole idea of ECF is the companies will grow a lot when they're successful. But if they don't, they may not even grow at all. But the one bet that you make that succeeds will cover up your other losses. So what you do is you invest in 2 or 3 or more companies. You spread your bets, right? And then you invest. So these are the kind of consideration that you should do.
There is a question on how is crowdfunding being used to support the response to COVID-19. I don't know how you're going to respond to this.
There is, well, 2 ways, right? In one way, many of these companies that are operating today are actually saving our economy, right? I give you an example. Let's use this company called RentSmart, right? So RentSmart is another company that raises money, and they have this platform which basically allows people to rent out their platform to their properties. And it's a way for these people to collect the money without them being able to even being there, right? So typically those days you have to collect rental, you have to chase your tenant, the tenant collect the money and all that. But if you own 50 properties, 100 properties, it becomes a bit more difficult, right? If you own a property in Johor, it's a bit more difficult, right? And these people built the platform before COVID, right? They built it before COVID because they saw that this thing is emerging where we can help to be that platform that allows the tenant to pay almost automatically, and then the landlord gets the rental and all that. So among the services that they offer. But when COVID came, this platform was able to help even those people with just one property, because they throw their property onto this platform, and then the platform helps to collect the rental. And so in that way, many of these companies are coming up with solutions that are helping. The simple one even are all these food things and all that, these food delivery apps and all that. So these are kind of things that crowdfunding can help. That's on the business side. But I must also say our reward crowdfunding side, which is operating today, last year we were one of the first few platforms to get quite a few projects online. One of them was run by MDEC, but there were others private people who came and they launched projects to actually raise money to build these PPEs for, PPEs and face masks and all that to help people. There was a doctor who came and raised money so that he could then use that money to help in that area where he operates this all this COVID-related projects. So to a certain extent, our real crowdfunding site was able to be used very quickly for people to raise money to help these frontliners and all that. So we did help there. And as I said, the businesses today are helping a lot of our economy transition to the digital side.
Right. So, Kash, very quickly before someone else asks a question, has there been a campaign that failed? That means it didn't raise the money.
Yes, we have a very low rate of campaign that were not successful. I think I can count about 2 or 3 campaigns.
Okay.
Very, very few, right? But that's because our system helps people to understand: are you ready to raise funds or not?
Right.
So so to a certain extent, if you want me to reverse it, I can tell you that not everybody who comes to us are able to reach the end of our platform. Right. So a lot of companies, we help them to understand that you're not ready to raise funds, because it's better that you understand that you're not ready to raise funds than for you to try to go live and fail.
Yeah.
Because Malaysians have got, we all have memories, right? If you remember, the platforms, this company failed to raise, then they are not able to actually
raise subsequently.
Right? So we help them to not to reach that stage. Right? So typically our team is able to help companies. So we have this thing called the soft kind of thing where before we go live, we put you in front of investors, and the investors also look at your company and they sort of tell you whether would they be interested to invest or not. And if at that point, if we find that there's not much traction of investment traction, then we tell these people, you may not succeed. You better go and maybe repurpose your business or wait for more traction before you come back. So in that way, a lot of companies are in that stage. But we did have 1 or 2 companies who came, tried to raise money, and then to a certain extent, I would say good companies, but maybe because the founders were not able to focus on fundraising, right? They were not able to focus on fundraising, then they were not able to succeed. There were one company at least like that, and then 1 or 2 companies came to the platform, and then COVID hit. Right? And then COVID hit, and it directly affects your business. And you're not able to operate for a few months. Then investors are going to say, hey, how can I invest? Right? So how can I invest? So because of that, maybe one other company was like that. So there's very few. We like to say that we help you to understand before you fail, whether you can succeed or not.
Yeah. The same question again. The question: what you look for before they invest?
Yeah. They look for investability. They look for the founders. They look for whether the idea is large enough or not. Right? They really look for ideas that are large. Whether they can grow big. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a really good question. Can I apply for crowdfunding in pitchIN if I'm a non-Malaysian?
Well, the good news is you can. Right. So our Securities Commission has prepared guidelines that I think are very, very pro-business. We really like the guidelines that have been released by the Securities Commission. So one of the guidelines that says is the rule is the company must be incorporated in Malaysia. That's it. So I can't work with a company that be incorporated in, say, Indonesia or Singapore. No, I can't.
Okay.
But as long as the company incorporated in Malaysia, and we know that in Malaysia, a foreigner can incorporate a company, right? So by that definition, and we do have founders, at least one founder who is not from Malaysia. We do have companies like that. So yes, if you're not Malaysian, you can apply for crowdfunding, no problem. The good news is the same rule also apply for investors. So under FC guidelines, your investors can come from anywhere in the world, not just Malaysia. So some of our campaigns have drawn investors from outside Malaysia. I think over 20 countries. We have investors today from over 20 countries who have come. So to your usual suspect, we have investors from Singapore, Japan, Australia, UK, but even as far away as countries from Africa. You've got investors who have invested into Malaysian deals on pitchIN, right? And even in the middle. So yeah, it's a very open thing. You can.
Hello, good evening. What will happen if the crowdfunding is accepted but the money raiser unable to pay back, like not able to complete his or her business ideas? Oh dear.
Oh, so we shoot them dead. No. Okay, yeah. So here comes the question. So and this is a very good question. So
Yeah,
again, so answering this question can take a lot of time, and I can't spend that time. But it covers two different things. I'll just very briefly explain the two different things. One is that we tell people when they come and raise money on pitching, please value your company fairly, right? By that I mean understand what is your value of your company. So don't come to me, you got very little revenue, and then you say, I think my company is valued 100 million. Right? And then you tell me I want to try to raise at 100 million valuation. And then I say, okay, you do. And then you go and there are investors who believe in you and they put their money. Now, you sold the idea of that company at 100 million valuation because you told the investors, today my revenue is only 50,000, but by next year, my revenue is going to hit 5 million. Year after, I'm going to hit 30 million, and then I'm going to be a unicorn in 3 years' time, which is actually impractical. But you told that investors that, and the investors believe and they put their money in. Now, you have a problem because you're not going to be able to hit your numbers. And the same people next year are going to ask you, hey, where's your 5 million revenue? You didn't hit. And they'll be very upset. And that's at that point, they'll be telling you cheated me and giving back your money and all that. So that's one area that we tell founders, be very careful. Value your company fairly. Respect the money the investors are giving you. It's important money because without that money, you can't launch your business. Give them fair value. And we can help you value the company, right? You're supposed to value the company on your own, but we can advise you by showing you ways to value your company to understand what's a fair valuation. So if you do your company at a fair valuation, you take your money and you're a genuine investor and you give it your best shot and you fail, then no investor can do anything to you. All they can say is that tough luck, you tried.
tough luck. Yeah. So it appears to me, Kash, that pitchIN, both you and Sam, or your team, could also be a great gatekeepers for startups wanting to raise money. You said valuation is one thing. Say someone gives you an unreasonable valuation. You said you both will help them. What shall I say? Bring down their expectation. Is that something that you do as well?
Yes.
But what if they have undervalued their company, and then you say, oh no, you can go for this much? What kind of a role, midwifery role, do you play?
Okay, all right. Okay, so to answer the question technically first, we are not licensed financial advisors.
Okay.
Right? So we don't have a corporate advisory license and all that. So SC made it very clear, the equity crowdfunding platforms, we are a platform. We connect investors to companies. We're supposed to do due diligence. So we do look at the business proposition and all that. But at the end of the day, it is a willing buyer, willing seller kind of thing. So if a company comes to us and say, I want to do this valuation, and I help them to understand looking at your peers, you should be valued as this. Looking at this, I give you this tool to do valuation, you should be valued as this. But you still want to do a higher valuation, I can't technically stop you. I let you try to do it. I can't stop you. But I advise you of the risk that you face. That if you year down the road, you are going to have problems asking and explaining to investors when they're asking you, why aren't you meeting your goals? Right? So we our role is really, we sort of make things clear to investors and to the companies and tell them, this is the situation. You have to be very careful. But if you still want to go out at that market, then you go out. And at the same time, we tell investors, when you come to a pitching deal, please investigate every deal yourself. Of course, you leverage on the power of the crowd. You see what others are investing, but please check out every deal and ask all your hard questions before you actually invest in them. Right?
So there's another question. What advice will you give someone embarking on crowdfunding for the first time?
First time, I think the most important thing is to understand crowdfunding, because some people come to us even on the reward and even on the equity, and they think that we are a magic platform. I come to you with the idea, I come to you with the business, and then
Whoa.
boom, you give me your company. 2 weeks later, I'm going to put you on a platform, and the investors are going to line up and throw money at me. And then they ask us, hey, why isn't anybody investing in me? Right? And I tell them, you fail to understand crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a platform, right? So all I can do, and this is a very important analogy I like to use, is that think of it like a stage,
Mm.
right? I have a stage. I've got good sound equipment and everything on my stage. You are the singer. You have to come onto the stage and sing and even dance if necessary, so that you can get fans to put money or buy tickets. If you
Yeah.
don't sing and dance, if you don't run your campaign strongly, I can't do anything, right? I've got my database. I've got 10,000, 12,000 people, I think, by now on our mailing database. I've got another, 13, 14,000 on my Facebook page, and I can amplify that noise and I can send your data to all of them. But if you don't shout as loud as I or even louder than me and reach out to your own crowd, right? I can't do anything. Right? So
Yes.
you need to understand crowdfunding. If you're not willing to sing and dance, you're not going to succeed.
Okay. Good, great answer. How do valuation in my company only started less than a year, still not getting profit. If my company want to apply for ECF, what's your suggestion?
Yeah. So the first question is, your company less than 1 year, no profit. I can still help you do valuation. If you have revenue, maybe I can help you understand the kind of multiples you can get for your revenue. Or if you have users, I can help you understand this amount of users will probably value you at this time. Or I can help you to understand that your peers are valued like this, right? Your peers, right? So if you come to me with an idea in the property technology, prop tech industry, I can tell you, this prop tech company is valued like this, and they've got this amount of revenue, and they got this amount of users, so you got this less. So you are at this stage, you probably valued at around this price. Right? So we can help you to understand, even if you're less than 1 year, how to value your company. For the second question, if my company may want to apply for ECF, suggestions to offer preference shares or ordinary share, this is highly technical, hard to answer. I would say both have got their own advantages, right? And in some cases, ordinary shares are better because you don't have to promise anything. Preference shares give rights to investors, so you have to promise things. But sometimes investors will not invest in that particular idea unless they have preference shares, right? So I think the best way is that come and talk to us. We'll help you to understand whether you should go for preference or ordinary shares.
Right. So, Cash, if there's any questions, I think they will let me know. But what's the chances of someone who have raised money at crowdfunding money to raise the second, what shall I say, the next stage of funding, like Series A or Series B? What's the probability of that happening? And have you seen much success in that area?
Sure. We have a lot of companies who have gone on to raise more funds.
Okay.
At least 2 or 3 of them have come back to our platform and raised the next round. But many of them have also raised money from VCs in the next round.
Right.
Some of them at least 2 rounds from VCs, right? So
Right.
I can name for you some companies. For example, Kaki Tangan raised twice
Right.
from VCs. Signature Market have raised money. WAP, this WAP, the platform that we use to put your resumes and look for jobs platform. WAP has raised money
Yes.
from VCs, and so has Commerce.Asia. So have quite a lot of companies have gone on to raise multiple rounds. In fact, to a certain extent, in the beginning, yes, in 2015, 2016, a lot of VCs were saying, hey, is this competition for us? Or is this, are we taking away our business? So the short answer is no. We work alongside you. We play in the same area. In fact, we help these companies raise their first round so that as they grow bigger, then maybe you can come in together. And some of these VCs now are coming in even at ECF rounds. Right? So we have deals where an equity a VC company will take up, say, $1 million, and then another 3, 4 million is open to the public. We do have those kind of deals too.
And can the VC then also, the same VC who's taken up the large chunk in the ECF level stage, can they also reinvest again at the second they can
Yes.
invest?
Even
Okay.
even in some cases, the ECF investors have reinvested, right?
Right.
So for example, Kaki Tangan and Commerce.Asia, these companies, when they did their next round, under preemption rights, you first offer the same shares, these new shares, you offer them to your own investors first. And some of these people says, I'm willing to top up. I want to buy more shares. So they bought more shares at a more expensive price, mind you, because the company's value has gone up. So yes, you can always participate if you have. Of course, in some deals, the VC will come and say, I want to take this whole deal myself. So you all got to waive your rights, but I will bring value. I'll put in a large sum of money, and I'm coming in at this price. So yes, either way is possible.
Right. We have maybe less than 15 minutes, Kash. I know it's going to be your dinner time, and just want you to talk a little bit about your own fundraising. You and Sam has done an excellent job. I'm embarrassed to say that I missed the boat, although so many times the boat came to me. I think my wife and I had a big fight over it. I told her, you should go for this. She controls the bank account, ma. So, so tell us about your own. You are raising what, 10 million now? 10 million already, right? 5 million, but 10 million.
Yes, sure. I can tell you about our round, and it's okay. Sam, Dash, one day, maybe the next round you can invest. Hopefully, it might come. But basically, okay. So our story, right? So we started on our own, right? So Sam and I started the business, and whatever money that we had in the beginning was our own money, right? Either raised through some of the projects that we did or our own funds. So we've been self-funded. And after we got our license, we did get a grant from Cradle. So we are grateful for that. We did manage to get a CIP 500 grant, which also then allow us to get 500,000 from Cradle, which was used for marketing, but it was very specific, right? So the Cradle grant works in a very specific way. We could only use certain money mostly for marketing and all that, but it was very useful and it helped us to take us through. Then we continued to fund ourselves for the next 4 more years, right? And then we grew, right? So as I told you just now, when we wanted to raise money, we look and say, okay, how do we value ourselves? Where are we in the crowdfunding world? And we found out that actually we are the leading platform in the whole Asia Pacific, especially if you were to not look at dollar. Don't compare the value of Australian dollar to Malaysian ringgit. So that's 3 for 1. I can't. But if you were to use it as a 1 for 1 basis, we have done more deals than even the Australian crowdfunding platform or even the New Zealand crowdfunding platform or those in other parts of Asia. So we are basically in Asia's number 1, right? But we needed money. So here comes the question of why and when should you raise money? You should raise money only when you need it, because you're giving away shares in your company, right? So today Sam and I own 100% of the company, right? But come next month, after we complete our 5.5 million, that 322, so we have 322 investors who are coming in and they're giving over 10% of our company to them, right? And then in the next few months, once the VCs come in, they'll be taking up 5 million. So we'll have given up another 10% again. Right? So 20% of our company will be owned by investors. Now, why are we doing this? Simply because we need money. We wanted money, and the reason for that is equity crowdfunding in Malaysia, we are fine. If Sam and I want to continue, we can just do this. We're already profitable. It's okay. But there are new services available. We want to do this thing called IEO, which is very similar to these ICOs, initial coin offering. These are digital tokens that SE is going to open up a license. So we are applying for it. And to do that, you need to have a certain amount of paid up capital. We also want to open a secondary market. We also want to move out of Malaysia. We want to start looking at countries like Indonesia and Philippines, for example. We have other plans that we are launching. So all of this require money. So at this point, we felt that yes, we needed the money. So wanted to do, and we felt that, and there was also these VCs talking to us. They said we are willing to invest in you. But Sam and I felt that since we run an equity crowdfunding platform, we should give the first opportunity to invest to our own network of people, those who understand what equity crowdfunding, those who love us, right? So what we did was we separated our deal and said 5 million for crowdfunding. So we ran our campaign, and we ran it on lead capital, and we ran our campaign. But before that, in the same way, I advised everybody, we prepared, we sent out our emails to people. We had this offer where if you come in early, you could get some bonus shares and all that, and we ran our campaign, right? And at the end of the campaign, in fact, before the closing date, we had crossed 5 million, and it continued to grow to 5.65 million.
Right.
We actually only wanted 5 million. But then Sam and I consulted and said we should not turn anybody away. Because these people, they believe in us, and more importantly, and this is one of the benefits of crowdfunding, these 322 people will become our ambassadors and evangelists. So we took all our investors, but we returned back some money. Right? So we returned back some money so that we kept it to below just around 5 million. Right? So we returned back some money. And that's exactly what happened. The deal has closed. Now we are signing agreements. The VC, same thing, VC does due diligence. So we are working with the lawyers. That's almost completed. And we'll be able to announce that other 5 million soon.
So you basically valued pitchIN at 50 million?
We valued pitchIN at 45 million.
Okay.
Right. So once we raise our money, you can say that pitchIN. So there's this thing called pre-money valuation and post-money. So
that's right.
We valued pitchIN at 45 million ringgit pre-money. So that's what we felt the value of the company was. In fact, we also went and did a professional valuation, and our actual valuation was 66 point something million valuation. So what we did was we said we don't want to do 66, we will do 45. So in other words, we gave discounts to our investors. You're coming in at a lower valuation than what our company's valuation really is. And
right.
Now today, once we finish our full 10 million round, then you can say our company's valuation post money is 55.5 million.
Right. So Kash, I don't know, I'm going to ask you maybe a question that you can choose to answer. So now you are in a better position to buy that beach house if you exit. So what's your long-term plan?
Okay. No. I will have
maybe a few beach houses,
Yeah, no. We're still entrepreneurs, right? So I don't drive these big cars and all that, So no, I still am a simple man, and we are all very simple people. So there's no worry about that. Now I the first thing that should start is I will not say I refuse to answer the question. I happily answer the question. And I and Sam are both not your typical entrepreneurs. Most people start. And yes, I did start when I was 20 something. I no longer am 20 something. In fact, I am at retirement age today. Right? I've crossed 60. Right? A lot of people, I tell people I look 28 still, 30 and all that. No, I'm at 61 this year. I'm 61 years old. So I can retire if I want to, but I don't plan to retire. Right? And Sam is also a few younger than me, but he's also past 50. So both of us are not your typical entrepreneurs. And if we continue to do this for two reasons. One is that we feel that pitchIN has got a lot more things that we can do. Right? So we want to see how far we can grow pitchIN. The next thing, the reason we do is because we really, and if we're passionate about this, is that we are passionate about growing companies, seeing other entrepreneurs succeed. And really, you call out, I know you say we are gatekeepers. I don't think we are gatekeepers. I think we are what they call the welcoming people. Interact with a lot of people. I see companies every day. So typically we get companies approaching us every day. So I hear ideas all the time, and I listen to these fantastic people, and it's such a beautiful place to be in, right? And at the same time, we also value from our company profits, right? So because of that, we continue doing. But obviously, and this is one of the reasons why we raise money, is that I can't continue to do this on my own, and even physically no longer for many more years, right? So we are both ready, preparing to build our second line of leaders. So the pitchIN that you will see in the next 1-2 years will be very different, right? Sam and I will still be there, touch wood, right? We'll still be around. We'll still be managing it, but you will see business leaders for each of our units, right? So then I'll start thinking of that beach or the hill house that I want to move into.
But I still think you and Sam will not retire even into your age, because I think the future is not about retiring and going into the
Yes.
sunset. I think you will still contribute to
Sure,
the
sure.
ecosystem
Yeah.
and still start building, because the agency of you being an entrepreneur is already there. Kash, how do you see the startup ecosystem today? You and I started when it was nascent.
Yeah.
We saw ideas that didn't even look worth looking at, but a lot of energy we built along the way. How do you see the ecosystem today, and what do you think is most important moving forward?
Yeah, I think the ecosystem is in a good place,
Mhm.
right? There are a lot of things happening that were very conducive towards entrepreneurship. Our government, for one, has realized and they continue to support entrepreneurship. So in that way, it's a good way, good place. Of course, you and I know we are
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. We can always see gaps, right? So
Mm.
there are a lot of things that maybe we can do better, even at the government
Mm.
level. We still can do better. The agencies can still do better. And some
Mhm.
of the things I feel, and that's why Sam and I came out to do this, right? And that's why you also there. That some of these things we feel can be done better by the private sector, right?
Yes. Yes.
I just give you a very good example very quickly, if I have time. Uh, Many
Yes.
years
Yes.
ago,
You
the
have.
government used to give out free money to investors. They used to
Yeah.
invest and they gave it to VCs to just go and throw the money, and
Throw
you
the
don't
money.
hear much success. But
Yeah.
today, pitchIN has got so many success stories, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I'll tell the government, give us the money if you want to invest, like the co-investment fund, give us the money,
Yeah.
we can do a better job, right? So I think that way there's a lot more things. But I can tell entrepreneurs today, if you were to come out and start something today, there are a lot of ways to back you up. One thing. Second thing,
Yeah.
it's a great time to start businesses because digitalization, this march of technology advancements that you see today are really very conducive, very disruptive to business. So there are lots of opportunities that you can still do. But don't start with this idea of wanting to build a unicorn. Forget it.
Yes.
Don't come and tell
That's
me
right.
you want to be the next unicorn. I will tell you, go on dreaming, right? Because unicorns
Exactly.
are called unicorn for that reason. They're very rare. But you don't need to build a unicorn. You need to
Yeah.
build a company that can. And we know so many companies in Malaysia that are doing very well. The founders have done very well personally, and they've contributed a lot to the economy. And their solutions are really making a change. And they're not unicorns, so don't worry about that. Just come out and do something that you think you can contribute to, and that will bring value to somewhere, and that's all you need to
Yeah.
do, and you
Yeah.
take it as far as you can go.
I'm with you on the unicorn concept, because sometimes unicorns just happen serendipitously. You got the
Yeah.
market, it just moved, whatever. Cash, two quick questions before we close off at 7:30. One
Mm.
is, what is one of your favorite failures? That made you who you are today. Something that
Yeah.
something that failed and made you who you are today, that you learned from.
Well, I'll go back to business again. It's not that all my businesses were success. So my favorite failure was my IT company.
Mhm.
Right? So I started selling computers. Long story short, bad partnership, maybe differences in understanding. The next thing I knew, company was in deep financial trouble, right? And we have a very very bad shape. I had to rebuild the company on my own later on, but we basically failed, right? But that failure taught me a lot, right? The importance of having the right people, right? So so I'm happy that people like Sam and I work very well together. So I learned the importance of that, but I also learned from that failure that actually you can use it as a springboard. Because that company failed, I was then able to decide on something new, right? And we moved on to more selling of hardware into software, like websites, and later on into publication.
Thank you, Cash. And
Yeah.
if you had a space on a billboard on a highway that will scream out something that you want to tell everyone, what would that be?
That kind of question is very hard to answer, but I would say believe in yourself. I would just say that, just say believe in yourself, right? So if you think you can do it, believe in yourself, but prepare.
Thank you very much, Kash.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah,
for
sure.
having us, being with us today. Yes, you wanted to say something?
No. I'm happy. I just wanted to thank you for this lovely chat. So because I learned too, right? When you come back and think about all the things I said, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
a lot of insight that I gained from my own session with you.
Yeah, I would like to actually have a longer session. I'm trying to see whether I can build a podcast, and then maybe I will come and raise money with you.
Sure, that's
See,
great.
my regards to Sam. In regards to your family, enjoy your dinner. Thank you once again for being with Asia Pacific University's Enterprise Wednesday. For those of you who are attending, there will be a QR code that will be flashed. And together, on behalf of APU, I thank you very much again, Kash. Thanks again for coming,
Thank you.
joining us.
Happy to be here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you to APU too.
Thank you. All right, everyone, I will leave this to you.